The morning sun cast long shadows across the firing range at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Staff Sergeant Emma Collins stood at Lane 7, her M4 carbine resting against her shoulder with practiced ease. At 5'4", with her dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun and wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose, she looked more like a librarian than a Marine, which was exactly how she preferred it. Her shots rang out in steady succession. Each round found its target at 300 yards. Not exceptional, not terrible, just adequate enough to qualify without drawing attention. The kind of performance that would let her fade into the background of yet another training exercise, content to remain invisible among the crowd of larger, louder Marines who dominated every space they occupied. Corporal Tyler Dawson watched from the observation tower, with his arms crossed and a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. At 28, Tyler cut an impressive figure in his desert fatigues. 6'2" of confidence and swagger, he wore his designated marksman badge like a crown. The battalion's golden boy, the shooter everyone wanted on their team when the rounds started flying. He'd spent the last 4 years making sure nobody ever forgot it. "Check out Collins," Tyler said to the Marine standing beside him, not bothering to lower his voice. 300 yards, and she's still flinching. Someone needs to show that girl how real Marines shoot. The comment drew chuckles from the other shooters in the tower. Emma heard every word, she always did, but her face remained expressionless as she cleared her weapon and stepped back from the firing line. 3 years in the Marine Corps had taught her that responding only made things worse. Better to stay quiet, better to stay small, better to let them think whatever they wanted to think. She was collecting her gear when Tyler appeared at her shoulder, his smile wide and patronizing in equal measure. "Hey Collins, stick around after. I'll show you how to tighten up that grouping. No shame in needing help from the battalion's best marksman." Emma looked up at him, her expression carefully neutral. "That's very generous of you, Corporal." "Hey, we're all on the same team, right?" Tyler clapped her on the shoulder with enough force to make her stumble slightly. "Can't have our comms specialist getting smoked if things go hot. Someone's got to keep you safe out there." The condescension dripped from every word. Emma bit the inside of her cheek and nodded. "I appreciate the concern." 20 minutes later, she stood beside Tyler at the far end of the range, while he held court like a professor addressing a particularly slow student. His M40A5 sniper rifle lay on the bench between them, and he spoke with the confidence of someone who'd never been challenged in his life. "See, Collins, the thing most people don't understand about marksmanship is that it's not just about pulling the trigger." Tyler picked up the rifle and settled it against his shoulder with theatrical precision. "It's about breath control, trigger discipline, sight alignment, the fundamentals." Emma watched him, her hands clasped behind her back in a position of parade rest. "I see. And here's the thing about women in combat roles." Tyler's voice took on what he probably thought was a sympathetic tone. "No disrespect, but you've got different physiology, smaller hands, less upper body strength. You got to compensate for that." He fired a shot at a target 300 yards downrange. The round punched through the paper 2 inches left of center mass. Decent, standard, the kind of shooting that impressed civilians and satisfied qualification requirements, but would never save lives when everything went sideways. "See that?" Tyler grinned at her. "That's how it's done. Now the key is keeping your breathing steady. In for 4 counts, hold for 2, out for 4. Then you squeeze, don't pull, the trigger during your natural respiratory pause." Emma nodded, absorbing every word of his explanation. Not because she needed to learn it, but because she was cataloging every mistake in his technique, every misconception, every gap in his understanding that revealed him for what he truly was, a competent battalion-level marksman who'd never been pushed beyond the comfortable limits of his own ego. "Can I try?" she asked quietly. "Sure thing." Tyler stepped back with a magnanimous gesture. "Remember what I told you about the breathing, and don't tense up. Women tend to anticipate the recoil." Emma stepped to the bench and settled behind the M40A5. The rifle felt familiar in her hands despite the years she'd spent pretending otherwise. She adjusted her position, checked the scope, and fired a single round at the 300-yard target. The bullet struck 2 inches right of center. Deliberately imperfect. Deliberately adequate. Tyler beamed like a proud teacher watching a student's first halting steps. Not bad. See what happens when you apply the fundamentals? Keep practicing like that and you'll be hitting center mass in no time. Thank you, Corporal. Emma stepped back from the rifle, her expression grateful and deferential. This really helps. Any time, Collins. That's what teammates do. Tyler collected his weapon, already moving on to his next audience. Just remember what I taught you out there. Could save your life someday. Emma watched him walk away, that easy confidence radiating from every step. She wondered what he would say if he knew the truth, if he understood that every word of his instruction had been exactly wrong, that the techniques he described with such authority were the kind of surface-level understanding that got people killed when the situation demanded excellence instead of adequacy. But he would never know, because Emma Collins had spent 3 years making absolutely certain that nobody ever discovered what she really was. The memory hit her as she walked back to the barracks. She was 14 years old again, standing in the snow-covered mountains of Montana with wind howling through the pines and her father's patient voice in her ear. Emma, forget everything you think you know about compensating for physiology. Master Chief William Collins knelt beside his daughter, his weathered hands adjusting the scope on her rifle with the precision of a surgeon. Elite marksmanship isn't about physical strength. It's about mathematics and nerve control, mind over matter, understanding over force. William Collins was a legend in the special operations community, though few people outside that world would ever know his name. 23 years in the Navy SEALs, 4 combat deployments across 3 continents, 287 confirmed kills, though the real number was certainly higher. Most of his missions remained classified even after his death, buried in archives that would stay sealed for another 50 years. But on weekends, in the remote wilderness outside Billings, Montana, he was just Emma's father, the man who taught her to read the wind and calculate bullet trajectories while other girls her age were learning to apply makeup and navigate the social hierarchies of high school. "What's the wind doing?" William asked, his breath fogging in the cold mountain air. Emma closed her eyes and listened, felt the pressure against her skin, watched the way the snow devils danced across the open ground downrange. 8 miles per hour, maybe 9, gusting from the northwest. And the target? 1,000 yards, uphill angle approximately 4 degrees. Bullet drop? Emma did the calculations in her head, factoring in altitude, temperature, barometric pressure, and a dozen other variables that most shooters never considered. 27 feet 6 inches at this elevation. Drift approximately 18 inches right, accounting for crosswind and spin drift. William smiled, not with pride. He'd stopped being surprised by his daughter's abilities years ago, but with satisfaction. "Show me." Emma settled behind her rifle. Not the M40A5 she'd used at the range today, but a custom-built .308 that her father had spent months perfecting. She controlled her breathing. Not Tyler's simplistic 4-count rhythm, but the deeper, more nuanced technique her father had learned from a Russian defector who'd once been the Soviet Union's premier sniper instructor. The shot broke clean. 1,000 yards away, the target pinged, dead center. "Again," William said, "but this time, tell me what you're feeling." Emma fired 4 more times in rapid succession. Each shot found its mark within an inch of the others. "I'm feeling the rifle become an extension of my body. The calculations aren't conscious anymore. They're automatic, like muscle memory, except it's mathematical memory." "Good." William rested his hand on her shoulder. "That's the zone. That's the place where impossible becomes possible. Most shooters never find it because they're too focused on the mechanics. But you, Emma, You were born for this. You've got your mother's mathematical mind and my steady hands. That combination is rarer than you know." The memory shifted. Emma was 16 now, and her groupings at 1,500 yards were tighter than most military snipers could manage at half that distance. William had started teaching her the advanced techniques, the shots that pushed the boundaries of what physics said should be achievable, the calculations that required her to account for the Coriolis effect and the rotation of the Earth itself. "Why are you teaching me all this?" Emma had asked one evening as they cleaned their weapons in the workshop behind their house. "I'm not going into the military. I'm not becoming a SEAL." William had been quiet for a long moment, his hands continuing their methodical work of running a patch through his rifle's barrel. "Emma, skill is its own justification. Excellence doesn't need a purpose beyond itself. But if you want a reason—" He'd looked up at her then, his eyes carrying a weight she was too young to fully understand. "The world is full of people who can't protect themselves, and it's also full of people who think they're protectors but don't have the skill to back it up. If you ever find yourself in a position where lives depend on your ability to make an impossible shot, I want you to have every tool I can give you." The conversation had made her uncomfortable at the time. The responsibility implicit in her father's words felt too heavy for a 16-year-old to carry. But she'd kept training anyway, because making her father proud was the most important thing in her world. And then, on a cold morning in November of her senior year, 2 Navy officers had appeared at the door, wearing dress uniforms and expressions of practiced sympathy. Master Chief William Collins had died in a training accident, a fast rope malfunction during a classified exercise. The details were sparse because the mission itself was classified. They could tell her he'd died serving his country. They could tell her he'd been a hero. They couldn't tell her anything that mattered. Emma had stood at his funeral in Arlington National Cemetery, surrounded by quiet men with hard eyes who'd fought beside her father in places whose names she'd never know. They'd shaken her hand and spoken in the careful, measured tones of people who understood loss on a level most civilians never would. "Your father was the best I ever worked with," one SEAL had told her, his voice rough with emotion. "Saved my life twice, maybe 3 times. I'm so sorry, kid." Emma had thanked him and moved on to the next mourner, and the next, and the next. All of them saying variations of the same thing, all of them looking at her with a mixture of sympathy and expectation, as if they were waiting to see whether she would carry on her father's legacy or crumble under its weight. She'd made her decision that day, standing beside the grave of a man who'd taught her to be extraordinary, but who'd never asked her to prove it to anyone. She would join the Marines. She would serve her country. She would honor her father's memory. But she would do it on her own terms. She would prove that Emma Collins could earn respect without trading on the legend of Ghost Collins. She would be invisible until she'd proven herself through her own merit, free from the shadow of a father whose reputation she could never hope to match. So for 3 years, she'd hidden. She'd scored adequately on marksmanship qualifications. She'd volunteered for communications roles instead of combat positions. She'd endured the condescension and the doubt and the casual dismissals from men like Tyler Dawson, who assumed that quiet competence was the same as incompetence itself. And every night, in the privacy of her barracks room, she'd wondered if her father would be proud of her choice or ashamed of it. The doubt followed her through the rest of that week at Camp Lejeune. Tyler made sure everyone knew about the training session he'd given her, describing her shooting with the exaggerated patience usually reserved for children and golden retrievers. Emma listened to him hold court in the mess hall, transforming her deliberate mediocrity into evidence of his own expertise. "The thing about Collins is she tries hard," Tyler explained to a table full of junior Marines. "But some people just aren't cut out for trigger work, you know? Nothing wrong with that. Takes all kinds to make the Corps run. We need communicators as much as we need shooters." Across the mess hall, Gunnery Sergeant Victor Kane watched the performance with an expression that might have been amusement or might have been contempt. At 43, Kane was a Marine's Marine. 22 years of service had left their mark in the scars on his hands and the permanent squint lines around his eyes. He'd done 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan, and 1 classified deployment that nobody talked about, but everyone knew had happened. Kane had noticed Emma on her first day with the unit, not because she stood out. If anything, her talent for invisibility was remarkable, but because something about her quiet professionalism reminded him of operators he'd worked with in his younger days. The ones who let their actions speak because they had nothing to prove with words. But she was a communications specialist. Her file said nothing about advanced marksmanship training, and Kane had learned long ago not to see potential where the paperwork said there was none. So he'd kept his observations to himself and focused on running his unit according to the standards that had kept him alive through 6 combat deployments. The week ground on toward Friday with the usual rhythm of military life: training exercises, equipment maintenance, endless briefs about readiness and preparedness that everyone endured with the patience of people who'd heard the same speech 1,000 times before. Emma moved through it all like a ghost, present but unnoticed, competent but unremarkable, exactly as she'd intended. On Friday afternoon, she received the orders that would change everything. Deployment to Iraq. Mission brief Monday morning. Wheels up by Wednesday. The notification was brief and businesslike, offering no details beyond the timeline and the reminder to update her will and ensure all personal affairs were in order. Emma sat on her bunk that evening, staring at the deployment orders in her hands. Iraq, where her father had made some of his most legendary shots, where men still told stories about Ghost Collins and the impossible things he'd done with a rifle and a scope. She thought about Tyler, who would certainly be on the deployment, about Kane, who'd already made it clear he considered her a liability in combat situations, about all the ways this could go wrong if she continued hiding the one thing that might actually keep her team alive. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. The preview showed just 2 words. Storage unit. Emma stared at the message for a long moment before opening it fully. The complete text read, "Your father's storage unit in Billings, Unit 237. Code is your birthday. Thought you should know it's there. Chief Patterson, SEAL Team 6. Patterson. Emma remembered him from the funeral. One of the quiet men with hard eyes who'd stood in the back and watched the ceremony with the stillness of someone who'd learned to be invisible. She booked a flight for Saturday morning. The storage facility sat on the outskirts of Billings, a nondescript collection of metal buildings surrounded by chain-link fence. Emma found Unit 237 in the back corner, partially hidden behind a dumpster that probably hadn't been emptied in months. The code worked on the first try. The door rolled up with a screech of protesting metal. Inside, illuminated by the weak overhead fluorescent, was a carefully organized collection of her father's life. Boxes labeled in his precise handwriting, equipment cases stacked against the walls, a workbench with tools arranged by size and function. Emma stepped inside and felt the weight of memory settle over her shoulders like a physical thing. The first box contained his journals, decades of field notes and observations written in the cramped shorthand he'd developed over years of combat deployments. Emma sat on the concrete floor and read entries at random, her father's voice alive again in every precisely chosen word. Afghanistan, 2009. Made a shot today at 1,400 yards that should have been impossible. Wind was gusting to 20 miles per hour. Temperature differential between ground and target elevation was 15 degrees, and I had to account for the target moving at approximately 3 miles per hour walking speed. But I'd practiced this shot 10,000 times in my head. When the moment came, the mathematics were automatic. Rodriguez lived because I didn't miss. That's the job. Another entry from earlier in his career. Emma turned 14 today. She's already better than most shooters I've worked with. Not just technically proficient, she has the gift. The ability to enter that zone where time slows and the world narrows to just you, the rifle, and the target. I'm teaching her everything I know because someday, someone will need her to be this good. I just hope she's ready when that moment comes." Emma's hands shook as she read the words. Her father had known. He'd always known that hiding her abilities was her choice, not his expectation. He'd taught her excellence not to burden her with it, but to prepare her for the moment when hiding was no longer an option. The next box contained video files on an external hard drive. Emma found a laptop in the corner, ancient but functional, and plugged in the drive. The first video was dated 3 months before her father's death. William Collins sat in what looked like a hotel room, his face tired but his eyes sharp as ever. "Emma, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone and you're trying to figure out what to do next." His voice was exactly as she remembered it, calm, patient, carrying the weight of experience without ever demanding that anyone else shoulder that burden. "I know you joined the Marines. Chief Patterson has standing orders to notify you about this storage unit when you deploy to a combat zone. So by now, you're probably scared. Probably wondering if you made the right choice by hiding your abilities. Probably second-guessing every decision that led you to this moment." Emma's throat tightened as her father leaned closer to the camera. "Let me tell you what I know about you, kid. You're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and more capable than you've ever allowed yourself to demonstrate. You've spent these years proving you can earn respect on your own terms, and I admire that. But there comes a time when hiding excellence becomes its own kind of cowardice." The words hit like a physical blow. Emma wiped at her eyes as her father continued. "When you deploy, and you will deploy, you're going to face situations where your skills are the difference between your teammates living or dying. In those moments, being humble won't matter. Being independent won't matter. The only thing that will matter is whether you have the courage to step forward and do what nobody else can do." William paused, his expression softening slightly. "I'm not telling you to show off. I'm not telling you to prove anything to anyone. I'm telling you that excellence is its own justification, that the skills I taught you aren't about ego or legacy. They're about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. When the moment comes, and you'll know it when it does, don't hesitate. Don't second guess. Trust your training, trust yourself, and know that I'm proud of you. Always have been, always will be." The video ended. Emma sat in the silence of the storage unit, surrounded by her father's carefully preserved legacy, and let herself cry for the first time since his funeral. She spent the rest of the day going through the boxes, equipment her father had used on deployments, photographs of him with teammates whose faces were often obscured or redacted for security reasons, letters from people he'd saved, thanking the quiet man who'd been in the right place with the right skills when their lives hung in the balance. In the last box, she found another hard drive. This one was labeled simply, "Advanced Techniques." The videos were training sessions, her father demonstrating shots and calculations that pushed the absolute limits of what was physically possible. Techniques he'd learned from Russian defectors and British SAS snipers and Israeli counterterrorism experts. The accumulated knowledge of a man who'd spent 23 years perfecting his craft and who'd wanted to pass every bit of it on to his daughter. Emma watched for hours, her father's patient voice explaining the mathematics of shots that most people would consider miracles. And as she watched, something inside her that had been closed for 3 years began to crack open. She joined the Marines to honor her father's memory, but she'd been honoring the wrong thing. He didn't want to be remembered for his legend. He wanted to be remembered for what he'd done with his skills, protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. And he'd given her those same skills for the same reason. Emma locked up the storage unit as the sun set over the mountains of Montana. She had orders to deploy to Iraq in less than a week. She had teammates who thought she was barely competent with a rifle. She had a designation as a communications specialist that would keep her away from the situations where her real skills might matter. But she also had her father's voice in her head, telling her that when the moment came, hiding was no longer an option. She didn't know what that moment would look like. Didn't know when it would arrive or what form it would take, but when it came, Emma Collins would be ready. The flight back to North Carolina gave her time to think, to process, to prepare herself for what came next. She didn't plan to announce her abilities, didn't plan to suddenly become someone she wasn't, but she also wouldn't hide anymore when hiding could cost lives. By the time she landed at Camp Lejeune on Sunday evening, something had changed in the way she carried herself. Nothing obvious, nothing that would draw attention, but there was a quiet resolve in her movements that hadn't been there before. Monday morning's mission brief was classified above her current clearance level, which told her everything she needed to know about the seriousness of what they were walking into. Kane stood at the front of the room, his expression grim as he outlined what little he could share with the full team. Deployment to Fallujah. Mission parameters are need to know, but understand this. We're going into a hot zone with hostile contact expected. This isn't a peacekeeping operation. This isn't training. When we hit the ground, you follow orders exactly as given. No heroes, no cowboys. Clear? The room responded with a chorus of, "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant." Kane's eyes swept across his team, lingering briefly on Emma. "Collins, I want you at the FOB running communications. This is a direct action mission, and I need my shooters on point." Emma met his gaze steadily. "I can contribute more effectively in the field, Gunnery Sergeant." Kane's expression hardened. "That wasn't a request, Staff Sergeant. You're comms. You stay on comms." Across the room, Tyler smirked. Emma saw it in her peripheral vision but didn't react, just nodded to Kane and said, "Understood, Gunnery Sergeant." But in her mind, she heard her father's voice. "When the moment comes, you'll know it." The moment was coming. She could feel it like a storm building on the horizon. And when it arrived, Emma Collins would finally stop hiding. The C-130 Hercules touched down at Forward Operating Base Ramadi 3 days later. Emma felt the jarring impact through her seat as the transport aircraft bounced against the tarmac, engines screaming in reverse thrust. Around her, Marines checked their gear with the nervous energy of men preparing to step into a world where every shadow might hide a threat. Tyler sat across from her, cleaning his M40A5 with exaggerated care. He'd spent most of the flight telling anyone who would listen about his marksmanship scores and the targets he planned to eliminate once they made contact with enemy forces. The performance was familiar by now. Tyler needed an audience the way other people needed oxygen. "Don't worry, Collins," he said loud enough to be heard over the engine noise. "I'll keep an eye on you out there. Can't have our comms girl getting hurt before she even gets to use that radio." Emma didn't respond. She'd learned that silence was the most effective response to Tyler's particular brand of condescension. Let him think whatever made him comfortable. The truth would reveal itself soon enough. Gunnery Sergeant Kane moved through the cargo bay with the efficient grace of a man who'd made this journey too many times to count. His eyes cataloged every Marine, every piece of equipment, every detail that might mean the difference between success and failure once they left the relative safety of the FOB. "Listen up," Kane's voice cut through the ambient noise. "We touched down, we moved to the briefing room. Intel has updates on our primary objective. This is a fluid situation, and the mission parameters may have changed. Stay sharp, stay focused. Questions?" Nobody had questions. They'd all done this before in training exercises in previous deployments. The real questions wouldn't have answers until the bullets started flying. The FOB was a fortress carved out of hostile territory. Concrete barriers surrounded the perimeter in multiple layers. Guard towers bristled with weapons and surveillance equipment. Inside, a small city of temporary structures housed the machinery of modern warfare. Command centers, armories, medical facilities, and the hundreds of personnel required to maintain American military presence in a region that wanted them gone. The briefing room was cramped and overheated. 20 Marines crowded around a table covered with maps and satellite imagery. Emma found a spot near the back, her notepad ready for whatever intelligence Kane was about to share. A captain she didn't recognize stood at the head of the table. He looked young for his rank, probably fast-tracked through some specialized program. His eyes carried the weight of information he wished he didn't possess. "Gentlemen, Staff Sergeant," he nodded toward Emma, "your primary mission is to secure a weapons cache in the industrial sector of Fallujah. Intelligence indicates a significant stockpile of ammunition and explosives that insurgent forces have been using to supply attacks on coalition forces." The captain tapped the map, highlighting a cluster of buildings 3 miles into hostile territory. "However, we've received updated intelligence that changes the nature of this operation. The weapons cache is being used as a meeting point for a high-value target." He pulled up a photograph on the projector. A man in his 50s with a carefully trimmed beard and cold eyes stared back at them. "This is Hassan al-Badri, bomb maker, responsible for 52 confirmed American casualties over the past 18 months. Multiple IEDs that have targeted our convoys and patrol bases. He's meeting with Iranian contacts at the cache location to discuss expanding his network." The room went quiet. High-value targets meant increased risk. They also meant increased importance. This wasn't just another patrol. This was the kind of mission that could shift the tactical landscape of the entire region. "Your objective is to secure the cache and capture or eliminate al-Badri." The captain's voice was carefully neutral, but everyone in the room understood the subtext. Capture was the official goal. Elimination was the expected outcome. Time window is 6 hours from insertion. After that, intelligence suggests he'll be gone, and we won't get another shot at him for months, if ever. Kane studied the map with the intensity of a man calculating 1,000 variables simultaneously. Rules of engagement? Standard ROE, positive identification required. But understand this, al-Badri is considered an imminent threat to American forces. If you have a clean shot, you are authorized to take it. Tyler leaned forward, his interest visible. This was the kind of mission that made reputations, the kind of operation that would be talked about in ready rooms for years. Emma saw the hunger in his expression and felt a flicker of concern. Hunger made people reckless. The briefing continued with tactical details: approach routes, fallback positions, emergency extraction protocols. Emma absorbed it all, her mind automatically translating the information into three-dimensional tactical space. She could see the mission unfolding in her head, could identify the choke points in danger zones without conscious effort. Her father's training had made that kind of analysis instinctive. After the briefing, Kane pulled his team aside for their own planning session. 5 Marines who would be walking into a hostile, urban environment with limited support and a high-value target to eliminate. The kind of mission where everything that could go wrong usually did. "Dawson, your primary marksman," Kane pointed to a building on the map. "I need overwatch from this position. You'll have eyes on the cache entrance and the surrounding streets. Anything moves that doesn't belong, I need to know about it." Tyler nodded, his confidence visible. "I've got it, Gunny. Nothing gets past me." "Torres, you're on point with me. Chen, you've got rear security." Kane's finger moved across the map, assigning positions with the precision of someone who'd done this enough times to know where each piece needed to be. "Collins, you maintain communications with command. I need real-time updates on any changes to enemy disposition or friendly force movements." Emma started to speak, then stopped. Kane had made his decision based on what he knew about her capabilities. Arguing would accomplish nothing except making her seem difficult. Better to follow orders until circumstances changed. "We move out at 0400. Get some rest, check your gear, and remember, this isn't training. The people we're facing have been fighting in these streets their entire lives. They know every alley, every rooftop, every hiding spot. Our only advantage is discipline and training. Don't waste it." The team dispersed to their assigned quarters. Emma found a bunk in the female berthing area and lay down fully clothed, knowing that sleep would be impossible, but that rest was still necessary. Around her, the FOB hummed with activity, generators providing power, vehicles moving supplies. The constant low-frequency presence of modern military infrastructure maintaining its grip on hostile territory. She thought about the mission, about Hassan al-Badri and the American lives he'd taken with his bombs, about Tyler, who would be responsible for covering the team despite his limited understanding of advanced marksmanship, about Kane, who had no idea that the communications specialist he was keeping away from combat was probably the most qualified shooter in the entire unit. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the same unknown number that had directed her to her father's storage unit. Emma, your father made a similar shot in Fallujah in 2003. Same sector, 1,200 meters through urban environment. Saved 12 Marines. The conditions you're walking into will be nearly identical. If it comes to it, trust your training. Trust what he taught you. You're ready for this. Patterson. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Patterson had been monitoring her deployment, had access to classified mission briefs, was connected enough in the special operations community to know exactly what she was walking into and when she'd need encouragement. Her father's network was still looking out for her, even from beyond the grave. She typed a response. How did you know I'd need this? The answer came back immediately. Because Ghost knew. He left instructions, made us promise to watch over you. We keep our promises. Emma closed her eyes and let her father's voice fill her mind. All those training sessions, all those hours spent calculating trajectories and reading wind, all that preparation for a moment she tried to avoid by hiding her abilities. When she finally drifted into something resembling sleep, she dreamed of Montana mountains and her father's patient voice explaining the mathematics of impossible shots. The team moved out at 0400 as planned. The streets of Fallujah were dark, except for scattered lights in buildings where families were just beginning their day. The city had been torn apart by years of conflict, rebuilt in patches, torn apart again. Evidence of war marked every surface. Bullet holes in concrete, blast scars from explosions, entire blocks reduced to rubble and rebar. Emma moved with the team through the urban maze, her radio equipment secure against her back, and her M4 carbine held ready. Tyler ranged ahead, constantly checking angles and sightlines. Kane set the pace with the confidence of someone who'd navigated hostile cities before and survived by being careful, thorough, and absolutely unwilling to take unnecessary risks. They reached the overwatch position without incident. Tyler settled into place with his M40A5, scanning the target building through his scope. The weapons cache was 300 meters distant, a nondescript structure that could have been a warehouse or a workshop or any of the 1,000 generic buildings that made up the industrial sector. Command, this is Reaper 6. Kane's voice was barely above a whisper into his radio. We're in position, beginning surveillance. Emma established the communications link, monitoring multiple frequencies simultaneously. Coalition forces in the area, local police, intelligence intercepts, the technological web that gave American forces their information advantage in an environment where the enemy could be anyone in anywhere. 30 minutes passed, an hour. The sun began to rise, painting the city in shades of orange and gold that should have been beautiful, but instead just made it easier to see the destruction. Movement, Tyler reported. 3 individuals approaching the cache from the east, armed, AK-47s visible. Kane adjusted his position to get a better view. Confirmed 3 military-age males with weapons. Collins relayed a command, possible high-value target approaching. Emma transmitted the information, her voice calm and professional. Inside, her mind was already calculating trajectories and sightlines, anticipating what would come next, preparing for the moment when hiding would no longer be an option. The 3 men entered the building. More arrived over the next 20 minutes. By the time the sun was fully above the horizon, Emma counted 12 insurgents around the cache location, all armed, all moving with the confidence of people who believed this territory belonged to them. Then Hassan al-Badri arrived. Emma saw him through her binoculars before Tyler announced his presence. The bomb maker moved with the careful precision of someone who knew he was a target. 2 bodyguards flanked him constantly. He never stood still for more than a few seconds, never presented a clear shot from any obvious angle. Positive ID on high-value target, Kane said into his radio. Al-Badri confirmed on site. Request permission to engage. The response came back within seconds. Reaper 6, you are cleared hot. Engage and eliminate. Kane looked at Tyler. Dawson, this is your shot. Clean kill, center mass. Wait for a clear opportunity. Tyler settled deeper into his shooting position. Emma watched him adjust his scope and check his breathing. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tremor in his hands. This was the biggest shot of his career, and he knew it. The pressure was visible in every movement. Minutes passed. Al-Badri moved between rooms, visible through windows for brief moments before disappearing again. Tyler tracked him through the scope, finger resting on the trigger guard, waiting, looking for the perfect moment. Come on, Tyler muttered. Give me a clean shot. Al-Badri stepped into a doorway. 3 seconds of exposure. Tyler fired. The round struck concrete 2 feet left of the target. Al-Badri and his bodyguards immediately disappeared deeper into the building. Insurgents around the cache scattered, taking defensive positions. The element of surprise was gone. What the hell happened? Kane demanded. Tyler was already chambering another round, his face flushed. Wind shifted. I compensated, but not enough. Get me another shot, now. But the situation had changed. Al-Badri knew someone was targeting him. He was no longer presenting himself as a target. The windows and doorways were empty now. The building had become a fortress. Then the first sniper shot rang out from an entirely different direction. The round struck the concrete barrier 6 inches from Kane's head. Chips of masonry exploded outward. The gunnery sergeant dropped immediately, pressing himself into whatever cover he could find. Sniper! Enemy sniper! More shots followed, precise, measured, coming from an elevated position at least 800 meters away. Whoever was shooting knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't random fire or suppressing fire. This was professional counter-sniper work. Lance Corporal Ryan Chen cried out and went down, blood spreading from his leg. The round had struck his femoral artery. Without immediate medical attention, he had minutes before he bled out. Chen's hit. Sergeant Miguel Torres crawled toward the wounded Marine, already pulling out a tourniquet, but the enemy sniper had them pinned. Every time Torres tried to move, rounds struck the ground around him with terrifying accuracy. Tyler swung his rifle toward the enemy firing position, scanning desperately. I can't see him. He's too well concealed. The angle's impossible. Another round struck near Emma's position. She'd already identified the shooter's location by sound and muzzle flash signature. 3rd floor window of a building 800 meters northeast. Soviet Dragunov rifle by the sound. 3 shooting positions being used in rotation to avoid counterfire. And the technique was familiar. Emma had studied countless hours of footage showing Spetsnaz-trained snipers. Her father had emphasized learning from enemies as much as allies. The rotation pattern, the positioning, the cold efficiency of the shots. This wasn't an insurgent who'd picked up a rifle. This was a professional military sniper, probably Russian, almost certainly training local forces in advanced techniques. Her father had faced snipers trained by the same program. In Chechnya in 1999, William Collins had gone up against a Spetsnaz instructor named Viktor Volkov, who'd taught a generation of Russian special forces how to kill from distance. The patterns were identical. Gunny, we're pinned down, Torres reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. Chen's losing blood fast. I need to get to him, but that sniper has us locked. Kane tried to move and immediately drew fire. The enemy marksman could see every position, could read every attempt at movement. They were trapped behind inadequate cover, with a wounded Marine bleeding out and no way to reach him. Tyler fired again and again. Each shot missed by feet. He was aiming at positions the sniper had already abandoned, falling further behind with each attempt. The frustration was audible in his breathing. "I can't get a read on him," Tyler admitted, his voice cracking. "He's too good. He's moving too fast. I'm outclassed." Kane's face was grim. He understood what Tyler had just acknowledged. They were facing an enemy who was simply better than their designated marksman. In a fair fight, Tyler would lose. And with Chen bleeding out, they didn't have time for a fair fight. Emma made her decision. "Gunny, I can make the shot." Kane didn't even look at her. "Negative, Collins. Stay on communications." "Sir, Chen has less than 10 minutes before he bleeds out. Tyler can't get a clean shot, but I can." Tyler stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Collins, no offense, but I just tried 8 times and couldn't even come close. You had 1 training session with me. This isn't the time for—" Emma cut him off with a voice that carried an edge nobody on the team had ever heard from her before. "Tyler, everything you taught me last week was wrong. Your breathing technique is inadequate for precision work. Your wind reading is superficial. Your understanding of advanced ballistics wouldn't qualify you for the first week of actual sniper school. So right now, I need you to stop talking and watch what real marksmanship looks like." The words landed like physical blows. Tyler's mouth opened and closed without sound. Kane turned to stare at Emma with an expression somewhere between shock and dawning comprehension. Emma didn't wait for permission. She moved to Tyler's position and took control of his M40A5. The rifle felt right in her hands, familiar, like greeting an old friend after years apart. The transformation was visible to anyone watching. The quiet communications specialist disappeared. Her breathing slowed and deepened. Her hands steadied. Her eyes focused with an intensity that made her look like a different person entirely. She adjusted the scope with minute precision, making calculations that Tyler would never have considered. 800 meters, crosswind gusting at 12 miles per hour from the southwest, urban thermal effects creating updrafts, bullet drop of 39 feet at this distance with the .308 Winchester round, the enemy sniper's rotation pattern giving her a 3-second window between position changes. Emma controlled her breathing using the technique her father had taught her. Not Tyler's simplistic 4-count rhythm, but something deeper and more effective. A pattern that slowed her heart rate and brought her into that zone where time seemed to stretch and the world narrowed to mathematics and instinct. Through the scope, she could see the enemy sniper's partial profile as he shifted between positions. Confident, professional, completely unaware that he was being observed by someone with her capabilities. Emma squeezed the trigger with the same controlled precision her father had drilled into her thousands of times. The shot broke clean. 800 meters away, the enemy sniper dropped instantly. The round had passed through a gap in the concrete barriers that measured less than 6 inches, striking center mass exactly where Emma had aimed. The precision was extraordinary. The kind of shot that would challenge instructors at any military sniper school in the world. The silence that followed was absolute. Every Marine on the team stared at Emma with expressions of complete disbelief. Tyler looked like someone had just explained that gravity was optional. Kane's mouth hung open in a way that would have been comical in any other circumstances. But Emma wasn't finished. Through the scope, she'd already identified the second threat. Another sniper on a rooftop 650 meters away. The first shooter's partner, probably his spotter. Intel had been wrong. This wasn't a lone wolf operation. This was a coordinated team of professional marksmen working together to trap American forces. The second sniper was scrambling now, aware that his partner had been eliminated by someone with exceptional capabilities. He was moving defensively, making himself harder to target. The shot would be significantly more challenging than the first. Emma tracked him through the scope, calculated his movement pattern, accounted for the crosswind and the partial concealment behind an air conditioning unit, waited for the moment when he would have to expose himself to acquire a new firing position. There, 3 seconds of visibility as he shifted to a different spot on the rooftop. Emma's second shot was perfect. The enemy marksman fell. The insurgent forces around the weapons cache, realizing their overwatch had been compromised by an unknown sniper with capabilities that exceeded anything they'd prepared for, began retreating in disarray. The tactical advantage had shifted completely. Torres immediately sprinted to Chen and began applying the tourniquet. The young Marine was unconscious but alive, barely. "Collins, where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Kane demanded, his voice a mixture of awe and anger, and something that might have been respect. Emma lowered the rifle and met his eyes. "My father taught me gunnery, Sergeant. Master Chief William Collins, SEAL Team 6. He started training me when I was 10 years old." The name hit Kane like a physical blow. His face went pale. "Ghost Collins was your father?" "Yes, sir." Kane sat down hard on the rubble, his hands shaking. "Jesus Christ. Emma, your father saved my life in Mogadishu in 1993. I was Delta Force, pinned down in the Bakara market. Everyone said the shot was impossible. 1,200 yards through urban chaos. But Ghost made it anyway. I've been serving with his daughter for 3 years and didn't know." His voice trailed off. The implications were obvious. He'd been keeping the daughter of one of the most legendary snipers in military history away from combat because he assumed she was incompetent. The irony was crushing. Tyler approached slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Emma, Staff Sergeant Collins, that wasn't just good shooting. That was something I didn't know was possible. The distance, the conditions, the precision. I've been telling everyone I was the best marksman in the battalion. I'm not fit to carry your gear." Emma's expression softened. "Tyler, you are good. Battalion marksman is nothing to dismiss. But my father taught me that there's always someone better, always something more to learn. Stay humble, keep training. That's how you improve." Torres had stabilized Chen enough for transport. The immediate crisis was over. But the mission wasn't complete. Al-Badri was still in the building, probably preparing to escape now that his security had been compromised. Kane's radio crackled. "Reaper 6, command. We're tracking 3 vehicles approaching your position from the south. Probable enemy reinforcements. You need to extract." But Emma was scanning the target building through her scope. Movement in a 3rd-floor window. Brief, almost invisible, but enough. "Gunny, I have eyes on Al-Badri." Kane moved to her position and looked through his binoculars. The bomb maker was visible for seconds at a time, moving between rooms as he prepared to evacuate. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly. "Distance?" Kane asked. Emma checked her rangefinder. 1,247 meters. The number hung in the air like a challenge. 1,200 meters was pushing the absolute limit of what the M40A5 could accomplish. Add in urban environment complications, moving target, potential civilian presence, and it became the kind of shot that most snipers would refuse to even attempt. "That's impossible," Tyler said quietly. "Even knowing what you can do, Emma, that's 3/4 of a mile through city streets. The wind channels alone make it unpredictable. The thermals from the buildings will create updrafts we can't compensate for. And if you miss, if the round goes wide, you could hit civilians." Emma studied the target through her scope. Al-Badri was moving in a pattern, checking different rooms. 3 seconds of visibility per cycle. The wind was variable, but measurable. The thermal effects were significant, but calculable. The civilian risk was real, but manageable if she timed it perfectly. She thought about her father, about the storage unit in Montana in the videos he'd left for her, about the mission brief Patterson had sent saying Ghost had made a similar shot in this exact sector of Fallujah, about all the hours of training and all the calculations, and all the preparation for a moment exactly like this one. "I can make the shot," Emma said. Not arrogance, simple fact. Kane studied her face for a long moment. He'd served with the best snipers in the world, had worked alongside SEAL Team 6 operators and Delta Force marksmen. He'd seen Ghost Collins make impossible shots that defied physics. And looking at Emma now, he saw the same cold focus in her eyes that he'd seen in her father's. "Collins, I'm not ordering this. I'm asking, can you make this shot?" Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw another message from Patterson. Just a photo this time. Her father in full combat gear, rifle in hand, standing in these same streets 13 years ago. The message underneath read, "He believed in you, so do we." Emma pocketed the phone and settled into her final shooting position. "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant, I can make this shot." "Then you're clear to engage. But Emma, if the civilian risk is too high, I need you to abort. Understood?" "Understood, Gunnery Sergeant." Emma took a deep breath and let her training take over completely. Every lesson her father had taught her. Every hour spent on Montana mountainsides calculating impossible trajectories. Every video he'd left showing her how to push beyond what normal human capability said should be achievable. Her phone buzzed again, one final message. She opened it with hands that had suddenly steadied with absolute purpose. Her father's face filled the screen, recorded in what looked like a hotel room somewhere in the Middle East. The timestamp was 3 days before his death. "Emma, if you're seeing this, you're in Iraq and you're about to take a shot that scares you." William Collins's voice was calm, steady, carrying that absolute confidence that had defined every aspect of his life. "I set this message to trigger if you ever deployed to Fallujah because I knew this moment would come. The shot you're about to take, I made a similar one in 2003. Same city, same kind of target, same impossible variables that make every calculation feel like gambling with lives." Emma's breathing remained controlled as her father continued. "Let me tell you what I learned that day. Excellence isn't about never being afraid. It's about having the skills and training to act despite the fear. You've spent 3 years hiding your abilities because you were afraid of living in my shadow. But Emma, you were never in my shadow. You've been standing in your own light the whole time. You just needed the courage to let other people see it." The video flickered. Her father leaned closer to the camera, his eyes carrying that intensity she remembered so well. "The shot you're about to take, you can make it. I know you can because I taught you how. Every variable you're calculating right now, we practiced together. Every doubt you're feeling, I felt too. But here's what matters. Somewhere in that building, or in the next convoy down the road, are people who need you to be this good. They need you to make the shot nobody else can make. Trust your training, trust yourself, and know that I'm with you. I'm always with you. Make the shot that matters, Ghost Jr." The video ended. Emma put the phone away and returned both hands to her rifle. Her breathing was steady now. The fear was still there, but it had transformed into something else. Focus, purpose, the absolute certainty that came from a lifetime of preparation meeting its defining moment. Tyler settled beside her with his spotting scope, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Tell me what you need, Emma." Range is 1,247 meters exact. Wind calls every 30 seconds. Track al-Badri's movement pattern and tell me when he's 3 seconds from appearing in the window. I've got you. After what I've seen today, I'd trust you to shoot a target on the moon. Emma allowed herself the smallest smile. Then she settled into the zone. The place her father had taught her to find where time slowed and the world narrowed to mathematics and instinct. She calculated. Distance, 1,247 meters. Bullet velocity, 2,600 feet per second. Flight time, 2.9 seconds. Wind drift, 18 inches right. Bullet drop, 41 feet vertical. Thermal rise, 6 additional inches. Target movement, 12-inch lead, Coriolis effect, spindrift, barometric pressure, humidity, a dozen other variables that most shooters never considered. But Emma had been calculating these factors since she was 14 years old. Her mind processed them automatically now, layers of mathematics stacking together into a single solution. Wind steady at 12, Tyler whispered. Target will appear in 17 seconds. Emma's finger rested on the trigger with the gentlest pressure, creating the neural connection between intent and action. 10 seconds. Her breathing slowed, 4 counts in. The air filled her lungs, oxygenated her blood. 5 seconds. 4 counts out. Her heart rate dropped. The world contracted. 3 seconds. He's moving to the window. Now. Hassan al-Badri appeared in Emma's scope, the bomb maker who'd killed 52 Americans, who'd terrorized the city for 18 months, who would never know that Master Chief William Collins's daughter was about to complete her father's mission. Emma's finger increased pressure on the trigger. Smooth, steady. The rifle was an extension of her body. The bullet was an extension of her will. Everything her father had taught her, every hour of training, every impossible shot practiced in Montana snow, all of it compressed into this single moment. The trigger broke. The rifle reacted with that familiar push against her shoulder. The bullet emerged from the barrel at 2,600 feet per second, beginning its journey through 3/4 of a mile of urban air. For 2.9 seconds, the bullet flew. It climbed on its trajectory, arcing upward to account for gravitational drop. It drifted right as the crosswind caught it, exactly as Emma had calculated. It passed through thermal layers rising from sun-heated concrete, pushed slightly upward by the updrafts. It spun through space on a path determined by physics and mathematics and a lifetime of training. Tyler watched through his spotting scope, holding his breath. Kane monitored from his position, his radio silent. Torres stopped working on Chen's wound, looking up at the distant building. Every Marine in the unit found themselves frozen, waiting for an outcome that would arrive before any of them could blink. The bullet found Hassan al-Badri's center mass precisely as he turned from the window. The impact was instantaneous, fatal, clean. The bomb maker dropped out of sight. Emma remained motionless for 3 more seconds, confirming the kill. Then she cleared her rifle and allowed herself one slow breath. "Target down," she said quietly into her radio. "Confirmed kill." But before Kane could respond, a different voice cut through on a frequency that somehow patched directly to the team channel. Patterson's gravelly tone carried weight and emotion. "Ghost Jr., this is Patterson. Command patch me through because I need you to know something about that target." A pause heavy with meaning. "Hassan al-Badri. He's the bomb maker responsible for the IED that killed 3 members of your father's SEAL team in 2009. Martinez, Kowalski, and Henderson. Your dad spent the last 2 years of his life hunting him. Never got the chance to finish it." Emma's breath caught. The rifle suddenly felt heavier in her hands. This wasn't just about protecting future convoys. This was personal. This was justice 13 years in the making. "Emma, you just completed your father's last mission, the one he died before finishing. Those 3 SEALs can rest now. And so can Ghost. He'd be so damn proud of you." Kane was staring at her, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something like awe. "Collins, you just avenged your father's teammates?" Emma nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The weight of what she'd just done crashed over her in waves. Not guilt, but the profound satisfaction of closure. Her father's unfinished business finally complete. "Thank you, Patterson," she managed finally, "for telling me. Always, Ghost Jr. Your dad's team looks out for his daughter. Always will. Semper Fi." The radio exploded with transmissions after that. Command requesting confirmation. Other units asking for details. Someone from battalion headquarters demanding to know who'd made a 1,200-meter shot in urban terrain that would be studied in sniper schools for the next 50 years. Kane silenced them all with one transmission, his voice carrying unmistakable pride. "This is Ghost Actual, shot confirmed. High-value target eliminated by Staff Sergeant Emma Collins, daughter of Master Chief William Collins, SEAL Team 6. Target was also responsible for the deaths of 3 Navy SEALs in 2009. This was justice 13 years delayed. Mission complete. Now clear this net so we can extract our wounded." Tyler sat back from his spotting scope, openly weeping. "Emma, that wasn't marksmanship. That was something beyond anything I can comprehend. You didn't just make an impossible shot. You completed a mission your father couldn't finish. You brought closure to families who've been waiting for justice for over a decade. And you did it with a level of skill that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to understand." The medevac helicopter arrived 14 minutes later. Chen was stable, bleeding controlled, his chances of full recovery good because Emma had eliminated the threats fast enough for Torres to work. As the helicopter lifted off with Chen secured inside, Emma watched it disappear into the Iraqi sky and thought about all the variables that had aligned to make this moment possible. Her father's training, her decision to hide her abilities for 3 years, Tyler's condescension finally triggering her revelation, Kane's guilt over a 23-year-old debt, Al-Badri's predictable routine giving her a 3-second window, Patterson's network watching over her, her father's teammates waiting 13 years for someone to finish what Ghost had started. Everything had conspired to put her in exactly the right place, with exactly the right skills, at exactly the right moment. Maybe that was what her father had meant when he said that excellence was its own justification. That skills existed precisely so they could be there when the universe demanded them. The flight back to base was quiet, each Marine processing what they'd witnessed. Torres finally broke the silence. "Staff Sergeant, I've served 12 years. Worked with Marine Scout snipers, Army Rangers, even some Delta guys on joint operations. I have never seen shooting like what you did today. Never even heard stories about shooting that good." Emma met his eyes. "My father made harder shots in worse conditions. I'm just passing on what he taught me." "Your father must have been something special." "He was the best," Emma said, her voice carrying the weight of 3 years of grief finally finding its outlet. "Not because of his confirmed kills, or his medals, or his legend, but because he understood that excellence isn't about ego. It's about protecting people who need protecting. That's what he taught me. That's what I'll teach anyone who wants to learn." The next 72 hours blurred together in a haze of debriefs and evaluations. Intelligence officers wanted every detail of the engagement. Classified reports were filed about the elimination of Hassan al-Badri and the Russian-trained sniper cell. Psychologists assessed whether Emma was mentally fit after making 3 combat kills, though she answered their questions with the same calm focus she'd shown behind the scope. And through it all, words spread like wildfire through the military community. The Ghost Marine, the communications specialist who'd made shots that defied possibility, the daughter of a SEAL legend who'd been hiding in plain sight for 3 years, waiting for the moment when her skills would matter most. The woman who'd completed her father's final mission and delivered justice to 3 dead SEALs. On the 3rd day, the Marine Corps Commandant called personally. Emma stood at attention in Kane's makeshift office, while a 3-star general's voice came through the secure line. "Staff Sergeant Collins, your actions in Fallujah have been reviewed at the highest levels of the Marine Corps and Joint Special Operations Command." The Commandant's voice carried the weight of authority tempered by genuine respect. 3 enemy combatants neutralized, including a high-value target responsible for over 50 American casualties and the deaths of 3 Navy SEALs. Shot placement and tactical decision-making that exceed anything in our current training doctrine. JSOC is calling your final shot one of the most technically difficult, successful sniper engagements in modern military history. Emma felt the weight of recognition she'd avoided for 3 years now being offered directly. "Sir, I was doing my job, protecting my team." "Negative, Staff Sergeant. You were doing far more than that. I'm authorized to offer you immediate placement as an instructor at the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School with full latitude to develop curriculum." Emma took a breath. "Sir, I'm honored, but I need to ask, is this offer because of what I did or because of who my father was?" The commandant's voice carried steel wrapped in understanding. "Staff Sergeant, I never had the privilege of meeting your father, but I've reviewed the engagement footage and after-action reports. What you did stands entirely on its own merit. Your father's legacy gave you the training, but you're the one who had the courage to step forward when it mattered. You're the one who made those shots. This offer is because of you, Emma Collins, not because of Ghost Collins." "Then I accept, sir, on one condition." There was a pause. 3-star generals weren't accustomed to conditions from staff sergeants. "Name it." "I want to train anyone who has the dedication to learn. Not just the shooters who already think they're good. The ones who need to discover they can be better. The ones who've been told they're not cut out for precision work because they don't fit someone's idea of what a sniper should look like. I want to change the culture that kept me hidden for 3 years because nobody bothered to look past appearances." The commandant was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to something that might have been approval. "Granted, Staff Sergeant, build me a program that identifies and develops talent regardless of where it comes from. You have my full authorization and the resources of the Marine Corps behind you. Show us what we've been missing." The call ended. Emma stood in silence, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. 3 years of hiding ended by 3 shots. 3 years of doubt transformed into opportunity to reshape how the Marine Corps thought about capability. Kane cleared his throat. "Emma, before you become some big-shot instructor, I need to say something." His weathered face showed every year of his 22 years of service, every scar from every deployment. "I failed you. I kept you off missions because I was terrified of losing Ghost's daughter, because I owed your father a debt I could never repay, and the thought of you getting hurt on my watch." His voice cracked slightly. "I let my guilt turn into overprotection that held you back. That was wrong. I dishonored both of you." Emma met his eyes. "Gunnery Sergeant, my father would understand. He knew what it meant to carry the weight of saved lives. The guilt that comes with surviving when others didn't. The debt you think you owe him, you just paid it by letting me take those shots, by trusting me when it mattered most. He'd be proud of you." "I hope so, sir." Kane extended his hand. Emma shook it, feeling the calluses from decades of service, the strength from years of combat, and the respect that had finally, completely replaced doubt. "One more thing," Kane said, reaching into his desk. He pulled out a patch, a custom-made unit insignia showing a rifle-scope crosshair with a ghostly silhouette behind it. "The guys had this made. They're calling you the Ghost Marine. Figured you should have the first one before it becomes official." Emma took the patch, running her fingers over the embroidered design. Her father's legacy and her own merged into a single symbol that would be worn by Marines for years to come. "Thank you, Gunny." The flight home was bittersweet. Chen was being medevaced to Germany for surgery, but doctors said he'd make a full recovery. He'd walk again, serve again, live the life Emma's shots had preserved. The team was intact. The mission was complete beyond anyone's expectations. But Emma couldn't stop thinking about Martinez, Kowalski, and Henderson, her father's teammates who died in that IED blast, and how 13 years later, justice had finally caught up with the man who'd killed them. Patterson was waiting at the airfield when they landed at Camp Lejeune. The grizzled SEAL chief stood apart from the crowd of families and unit personnel, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. When Emma approached, he pulled her into a brief, fierce hug that spoke volumes without words. "Your father would have given anything to see what you did out there," Patterson said quietly. his voice rough with emotion. "We've been watching over you like he asked, but Emma, you don't need us anymore. You've become everything he knew you would be. Hell, you might have surpassed him. I couldn't have done it without his training." Training is one thing. Having the courage to use it when everyone's watching and everything's on the line, that's something else entirely. That's character. That's who you are. That's all you, kid. Patterson handed her a weathered notebook bound in leather. "Your father's final journal, the one he was keeping when he died. Thought you should have it now. You've earned the right to read his last thoughts." Emma opened it with trembling hands. The last entry was dated 2 days before William Collins's death, written in his precise, economical script. "Emma turned 18 today. She's joining the Marines tomorrow. I know she'll hide her abilities. It's what I would have done at her age. Smart kid, trying to step out of the old man's shadow and make her own way. But someday someone will need her to be exactly as good as I trained her to be. When that day comes, I hope she remembers. Excellence isn't a burden to carry. It's a responsibility to those who can't protect themselves. I'm proud of her no matter what path she chooses, but I suspect her path will lead her right back to what I taught her. Skills like hers don't stay hidden forever. They're too important. They're needed too badly. And Emma has something I never had, the humility to hide until the moment demanded otherwise. That will make her better than I ever was. If you're reading this, Emma, it means Chief Patterson followed my instructions. It means you've stopped hiding. It means Marines needed you and you stepped forward. I'm proud of you. I always will be. Stay Ghost. Pass it on. Dad." Emma closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. Her father had known everything, had predicted her entire journey, had trusted her to find her way to this moment on her own terms, in her own time. "He knew," she whispered. "He always knew," Patterson confirmed. "Ghost had a way of seeing things others missed, including seeing who you'd become. Now go be the instructor he trained you to be. Change the culture like you promised. Make the Marine Corps realize that talent comes in packages they've been overlooking." The next 5 years transformed Emma Collins from a hidden warrior into a legend in her own right, but more importantly, into the teacher her father had known she would become. She built the training program she'd promised the commandant, creating a curriculum that identified overlooked talent and developed it without prejudice. The program became known informally as Ghost Protocol, a systematic approach to finding Marines who'd been dismissed or underestimated, and giving them the tools to prove their capabilities. Marines who'd been told they weren't sniper material because they were too small, too quiet, didn't fit the traditional mold. They found themselves under Emma's instruction. She taught them not just mechanics, but philosophy. Excellence as protection. Skill as service. The responsibility that came with being the person others counted on when everything went wrong. Tyler Dawson was her first official student and most dedicated convert. The cocky marksman who'd offered to teach her the basics became an instructor himself. His ego transformed into humility by the harsh lesson of discovering how much he didn't know. He would never reach Emma's level, few people would, but he became solid, dependable, and most importantly, humble enough to keep learning. "I tell my students about Fallujah," Tyler confided to Emma one day during a break between classes. "About watching you make 3 shots I didn't think were possible with that rifle in those conditions. About learning that the quiet person in the corner might be the most dangerous one in the room. Some of them don't believe me until they see you shoot. And then," Tyler grinned, "and then they shut up and start learning, just like I did. Best lesson I ever got, even if it hurt my pride at the time." "That was the point," Emma said with a slight smile. "Pride gets people killed. Humility keeps them alive and learning." Kane retired after 25 years of service, his conscience finally clear about the debt he'd carried for over 2 decades. At his retirement ceremony, he stood before assembled Marines and told them about 2 missions separated by 23 years and continents, but connected by one man's legend and his daughter's courage. Mogadishu, 1993. I was Delta Force, pinned down, about to die. Master Chief William Ghost Collins made a shot at 1,200 yards that saved my life and 5 others. I spent 23 years carrying that debt, wondering how I could ever repay it. Kane's voice grew stronger. Fallujah, 2016. I was serving alongside Ghost's daughter and didn't know it. I kept her off combat missions because I was afraid of losing her. Turns out, I should have been afraid of not using her. Staff Sergeant Emma Collins made 3 shots that day, the last at 1,247 meters through urban terrain, that not only saved our team, but completed a mission her father started and died before finishing. He looked directly at Emma, who stood in the crowd, trying not to draw attention. I learned something important from Emma Collins. Assumptions are dangerous. The person you underestimate today might be the one who saves your life tomorrow. Look beyond the surface. Find the talent others miss. Because excellence doesn't announce itself with loud voices and big egos. It waits quietly until the moment demands it. That's what makes it real. Lance Corporal Ryan Chen recovered fully from his leg wound, as the doctors had predicted. He stayed in the Marines, rose through the ranks steadily, deployed twice more, and started a family. When his daughter was born in 2018, he named her Emma Grace Chen, in honor of the woman who'd saved his life with shots that had redefined what he thought was humanly possible. She'll know the whole story when she's old enough, Chen told Emma when he brought his newborn daughter to meet her namesake. She'll know that her daddy gets to hold her because you had the courage to step forward when everyone said it couldn't be done. She'll know that excellence doesn't care about expectations. It just is. Emma held baby Emma carefully, feeling the weight of a life saved, creating new life, the cycle continuing. Make sure you tell her the rest of the story too, Emma said softly. That excellence isn't about being the best or proving people wrong. It's about being ready when someone needs you. That's the only thing that matters. By 2021, Master Sergeant Emma Collins commanded the Marine Corps' most elite sniper unit at age 30. She'd become one of the youngest Marines to reach such a position, and certainly the first woman, though the pioneers following her path were already in training. Learning from her example that capability recognized no boundaries except the ones people placed on themselves. Her office at the Scout Sniper School told a story in artifacts and images. Her father's photograph in full SEAL regalia, the eternal 28-year-old warrior frozen in time. The rifle he'd used to teach her, now a museum piece that occasionally still spoke in her hands on the range. The plaque reading, "For Dad, precision protects the innocent." And new additions that marked her own legacy. Photographs of students who'd gone on to save lives with the skills she'd taught them. Letters from families thanking her for training the Marine who'd brought their son or daughter home. On a crisp October morning, Emma stood before a new class of 30 advanced marksmanship students. They sat in rows, eager and uncertain in equal measure, looking at her with the mixture of respect and curiosity that came from knowing her legend, but not yet understanding her philosophy. Among them, in the back row, sat Lieutenant Sarah Chen, 22 years old, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, determined eyes that reminded Emma of herself at that age. Ryan Chen's daughter, seeking to learn from the woman who'd saved her father's life and given her the chance to exist. "Welcome to advanced marksmanship," Emma began, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who'd earned every word through fire and sacrifice. "Some of you are here because you think you're good. Some are here because you want to be better. All of you are here because you've been told this is where the elite are made." She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the class, making brief contact with each student. "I'm going to tell you something my father taught me, and it's the most important thing you'll learn in this entire course. Excellence isn't about being elite. It's not about being the best. It's not about proving anyone wrong or living up to anyone's expectations. Excellence is about having the skills to protect people who can't protect themselves. Every shot you take, every calculation you make, every hour you spend training, it's all in service of that single purpose. When you make a shot that saves a Marine's life, you're not doing it for glory or recognition. You're doing it because someone needed you to be exactly that good at exactly that moment. A hand went up in the middle of the classroom. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who'd clearly inherited her father's directness along with his determination. Master Sergeant, how do you make impossible shots? The things you did in Fallujah, the 1,200-meter shot through urban terrain that they teach at every sniper school now, how do you reach that level? Emma smiled, the question taking her back to snow-covered Montana mountains and her father's patient voice. You don't make impossible shots, Lieutenant. You master the fundamentals so completely that they become automatic. You practice 10,000 times, so the 10,001st happens without conscious thought. You train until the mathematics become instinct, until your body knows what to do before your mind finishes calculating. And then, when lives depend on it, you trust your training and take the shot. It's not magic, it's work. Years of work that culminate in seconds. The class nodded, some scribbling notes. Sarah Chen raised her hand again. Permission to speak freely, Master Sergeant? Granted. Sarah stood at attention, her voice thick with emotion barely held in check. My father is Sergeant Ryan Chen. He talks about you every single day. He says you're the reason I exist, that if you hadn't made those shots in Fallujah, specifically the 800-meter shot that killed the Russian-trained sniper who had him bleeding out, he wouldn't have survived to meet my mother and have me. Tears glistened in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. He also told me to give you this when I got here. She approached and handed Emma a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front made Emma's breath catch. Her father's distinctive script, her name written in ink that had been dry for nearly a decade. Emma's hands shook as she opened it, aware that 30 pairs of eyes were watching her, sensing they were witnessing something profound. Inside was a letter dated 3 days before William Collins' death, written with the care of a man who knew these might be his last words to his daughter. Emma, the letter began in her father's economical style. If you're reading this, you've become the teacher I always knew you would be. You've stopped hiding. You've discovered that your skills aren't a burden, they're a gift. And more importantly, you're passing that gift on to the next generation. By now you understand what I was trying to teach you all those years in Montana. Excellence has no gender. Capability recognizes no boundaries. The only things that matter are skill meeting need at the moment when lives hang in the balance, and the character to step forward when the moment demands it. You've proven both. The young Marine delivering this letter, Sarah Chen, daughter of the Lance Corporal whose life you saved, is proof that your shots echo through time in ways you'll never fully know. Every life you save creates ripples. Sarah exists because you step forward. The children she might have someday will exist because you step forward. That's legacy, Emma, not fame or rank or recognition. Impact. Now teach others to prove what you've proven. Show them that excellence comes in all forms, that quiet confidence defeats loud arrogance, that the most dangerous person in the room is often the one nobody notices. I'm proud of you, Emma. I always have been. I always will be. The ghost never dies. It just passes to the next generation. Stay ghost. Pass it on. Dad. Emma carefully refolded the letter, her vision blurred with tears she didn't bother to hide. She looked up at her class, 30 young warriors waiting to learn from someone who'd walked the path from doubt to mastery, from hiding to revelation, from fear to purpose. My father wrote this letter knowing I'd eventually find my way here, Emma said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning in her chest. Knowing I'd stop hiding and start teaching. He understood something that took me years to learn. Your skills are only as valuable as your willingness to use them when they matter most. Hiding excellence doesn't make you humble. It makes you unavailable when people need you. She held up the letter. This is what legacy really means. Not living up to someone else's standard. not matching or exceeding their achievements, but taking what they taught you and passing it forward to people who will face their own impossible moments, making sure the next generation is better prepared than you were. Emma turned to Sarah Chen. Lieutenant, your father wanted me to tell you something. He said every day he gets with you and your mother is a gift I gave him by having the courage to step forward in Fallujah when everyone, including me, thought it was impossible. He said I should teach you to be better than I am. That's what I intend to do. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears. My father also said I should learn from the best. That's why I requested this posting specifically. That's why I'm here. Then let me be clear about something to you and everyone in this class, Emma said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. I'm not the best. I'm not some perfect warrior or superhuman shooter. I'm just someone who had excellent training from a father who understood that skills are tools for protecting others, not trophies for proving yourself. The real excellence isn't in making impossible shots. It's in being ready when someone needs you to make them. That's what your training is for. That's what makes the impossible possible. The class was dismissed for a break. Students filed out, their expressions thoughtful and determined, the weight of Emma's words settling over them like armor. But Sarah Chen remained behind, waiting until they were alone. Master Sergeant, can I ask you something personal? Of course, Lieutenant. My father told me you hid your abilities for 3 years because you didn't want to live in your father's shadow, that you wanted to earn respect on your own terms as Emma Collins rather than as Ghost's daughter. Sarah chose her words carefully. Do you regret that choice? Those 3 years of hiding while people like Corporal Dawson treated you like you were incompetent? Emma considered the question, really thought about it. The memories of Tyler's condescension, Kane's well-meaning but limiting protection, the years of being underestimated and overlooked, the frustration and doubt and constant temptation to reveal herself just to prove she could. No, she said finally, with conviction. I don't regret it, because when I finally stopped hiding, it wasn't to prove anything to anyone. It wasn't about vindication or recognition. It was because Marines needed me to be that good. Chen was bleeding out. Tyler couldn't make the shots. Our team was going to die if I didn't step forward. I made those shots for the right reasons. Not for glory, not to prove Tyler wrong, not even to honor my father's memory. I made them because people would die if I didn't. That's the difference between ego and excellence, between showing off and showing up. Sarah nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. So hiding for 3 years was worth it because when you finally revealed your skills, it was purely about saving lives, not about proving yourself. Exactly. And Sarah, you need to understand something else. Emma's voice grew softer, but no less intense. Your father talks about me saving his life, but he doesn't tell you the whole story, does he? He doesn't tell you about his courage under fire, about how he maintained his position even after being hit, keeping the team informed of enemy movements until he lost consciousness, about how Torres risked his life to reach him, about how the entire team worked together to get him to that medevac. I made the shots, yes, but your father's courage and your team's cohesion are what actually saved his life. I was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Sarah smiled, tears running freely now. He does tell me that part. He says everyone played their role. But he also says that without your shots, none of their courage would have mattered, that you made everything else possible. That's what good teams do, Emma said. Everyone has their role. Everyone contributes. The lesson I want you to take from this, the lesson I want everyone in this program to internalize, is that excellence serves the team, not the individual. You don't develop these skills to be the best or to prove anything. You develop them so that when your team needs you, you're ready. I understand, Master Sergeant, and I'm going to try to live up to that standard. You already are, Lieutenant, by being here, by choosing to learn instead of assuming you already know. That humility, that willingness to be taught, is where excellence starts. every time. That evening, Emma sat alone in her office as the sun set, painting the room in shades of amber and gold. Her father's letter lay on the desk beside his photograph. She thought about the journey from that Montana firing range to this moment, about the girl who'd hidden her gifts to escape a legacy she thought she could never match, and the woman who'd discovered that legacy wasn't something to escape or match. It was something to continue, transform, and pass forward. Her father had been right about everything: the hiding, the revelation, the teaching. He'd seen the entire arc of her life and trusted her to find her way through it, knowing she'd arrive at this place in her own time, on her own terms, stronger for having made the journey herself. "I made you proud, Dad," she whispered to the photograph, "and I'm going to keep making you proud. Every student I train, every life they save, every impossibility they make possible, that's your legacy living on." The phone on her desk rang, duty calling. Another mission brief, another deployment request, another opportunity to put her skills in service of protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. "Master Sergeant Collins, yes, sir. I'm ready when you need me." But before she left the office for the evening, Tyler knocked on her door. Now a staff sergeant himself and one of her most effective instructors, he'd completely transformed from the arrogant marksman of 5 years ago into a teacher who led with humility and taught with patience. "Emma, wanted you to know, I just had a Marine in my basic class tell me women don't belong in sniper school. Said it wasn't natural, wasn't right, that women don't have what it takes for precision work." Tyler's expression was serious but not angry, more disappointed than anything. "I told him about Fallujah, about watching you make 3 shots that redefined everything I thought I knew about marksmanship and human capability, about learning that excellence has no gender, only dedication and skill. I told him about my own arrogance and how you showed me, with more grace than I deserved, that quiet competence beats loud confidence every single time." "What did he say?" Emma asked, genuinely curious. Tyler grinned. "He asked if he could transfer to your advanced program immediately. Said he wanted to learn from the Ghost Marine herself. Said if you could prove him wrong about what was possible, he wanted you to be the one to do it." Emma smiled, feeling the warmth of real progress. "That's good. Send him to me when he finishes your basic course. I'll make sure he understands what excellence actually looks like." "Will do. But Emma, I wanted to tell you something else." Tyler's expression grew more serious. 5 years ago, you could have humiliated me. You could have made those shots in Fallujah and then rubbed my face in every condescending word I'd ever said to you. You could have destroyed me in front of the entire unit. But you didn't. You treated me with respect even after I treated you with contempt. You gave me a chance to learn and grow instead of grinding me down. That grace, that kindness, that's what made me want to change. The shots proved your skill, but your character made me want to be better. I just wanted you to know that." Emma stood and walked around her desk, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Tyler, my father taught me that excellence isn't just about skill. It's about character. About treating people with dignity even when they don't deserve it. About leading by example rather than by force. You deserved a chance to learn, just like everyone does. I'm glad you took it. I'm glad you gave it to me, and I'm going to spend the rest of my career passing that lesson forward." After Tyler left, Emma stood at her window, watching young Marines train on the range below. The sun had set completely now, but the ranges were lit for night training, and she could see instructors working with students on the fundamentals that would one day save lives. She spotted Sarah Chen among them, Ryan's daughter, carrying her father's determination and her own fierce dedication to excellence. The cycle continuing, the lessons passing forward, the ghost living on in a new generation. Emma opened her father's final journal one last time and read the last entry again. His words about skills being too important to stay hidden, his prediction that her path would lead her back to what he'd taught her, his absolute certainty that she would become exactly what the Marine Corps needed her to be. He'd been right about everything. She closed the journal carefully, reverently, and prepared for the next day's classes. More students to teach, more lives to impact, more warriors to train in the philosophy that excellence was about protection, not glory, about service, not status, about being ready when someone needed you to be impossible. The Ghost Marine legend would continue, not because of 3 shots in Fallujah, though those would be studied and analyzed for decades to come, but because Emma Collins had learned the most important lesson her father ever taught. Excellence is its own justification. Skill serves no purpose except protecting those who need protecting. And the only legacy worth leaving is the one that lives on in the people you've trained to be better than you ever were. The next morning, Emma woke before dawn as she always did, and walked the ranges where she'd spent countless hours teaching. The air was crisp and still. Targets stood silent in the distance, waiting for the day's lessons. This was her cathedral, the place where mathematics and philosophy merged into life-saving skill, where quiet communication specialists became warriors, where the overlooked became elite, where impossible became routine. Her phone buzzed, a message from Patterson. Saw footage of your speech to the new class. Ghost would have loved every word. You're not just carrying the legacy anymore, Emma. You're building something better, something he would have been proud to learn from. Semper Fi, Ghost Jr. Emma pocketed the phone and breathed in the cool morning air. She thought about her father's final words in his journal, about skills being too important to stay hidden, about the responsibility that came with excellence, about the ghost passing to the next generation. She was ready. She would always be ready. Because being ready, being prepared for the moment when impossible became necessary, was what separated those who talked about excellence from those who lived it. Those who claimed capability from those who demonstrated it. Those who sought recognition from those who delivered results. The Ghost Marine stood on the empty range as the sun broke over the horizon, ready for another day of passing forward the gift her father had given her. Ready to train the next generation of warriors who would face their own impossible moments. Ready to prove again and again that excellence had no boundaries except the ones people placed on themselves. Emma Collins had spent 3 years hiding her light. She would spend the rest of her life teaching others to let theirs shine. The ghost never dies. It just passes to the next generation. And the next generation was ready to learn.